So React's a JavaScript library that breaks things down into components. Components can be as small as one button on the screen, or it can be as large as the whole web page itself, depending on what you're going for. Usually these components, most of the time you want to keep them small, and that way you can interchange them. If there's a part you don't need, you can just pull that component out. It won't take a lot of time to rewrite anything. React also uses a virtual DOM. That DOM, we've been walking that document object model. When we do it in JavaScript, it has to reload the DOM every time. That's why you use that document.ready or whatever it is, or I can't even think of the name of it now. But it checks to make sure everything's loaded before your function runs. With React, it creates a virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM, after you make changes, gets updated immediately. So it's a lot faster, a lot quicker when you're changing stuff out in React compared to vanilla JavaScript, as they call it. Vanilla JavaScript is just basic JavaScript, no libraries, anything like that. It's just JavaScript itself. So to start with, when we create one of these React projects, is you can go wherever you want to on your computer. And if you want to do along with this, I would recommend it just so you know how to do it when the time comes. So you can go on, I'm doing it on my desktop. I create a new folder. Call it Summer React for this class. And what we need is, we need to go out to the internet, and you'll need to download node.js. So if we look here, we go to node.js, and you have this download node.js LTS. Click on that. It should eventually download for you. You can open it up. Should look something like this. Welcome to the Node.js Startup Wizard. Go ahead and click on Next. I already have a thing of it on my computer, so I don't need to click on Change, Repair, or Remove. Should just. Yeah, first time installing it. You should just be able to click Next all the way through it, and just let it default where it puts it at and what it names it and stuff like that. And so as you go through, just keep hitting Next, and it'll go through. It'll install it for you eventually. And then it'll come up to where it says Finish. When you get to the Finish, go ahead and click on Finish. Pause the video for 1 second while you guys are installing that. So what you can do to make sure it installed properly is you can open a command prompt.
Run as admin?
You can. So I got my command prompt here, and if you do node-v space -v, it should tell you what version of Node you're running. To give you a version and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and then npm-v, that should give you a version.
You said man.
npm. npm stands for Node Package Manager. So that Node Package Manager,
Yeah,
it's a package manager for JavaScript. Allows you to install, share, and manage dependencies into projects. npm is the main part of the node.js environment, and it's recognized for its wide vast repository of JavaScript libraries and applications. So once you get that, we can go back to our Visual Studio Code. We're going to open that folder that we created. Desktop. I called mine Summer React. I'm going to select that. Once you select that folder, it should look something like that. It should have the name of the folder up there in your directory. Along the top line up here, you have File, Edit, Selection, View, Go, Run Terminal. We want to click on that terminal, and we want to start a new terminal. So now you'll see down here we have a terminal. When you look at this terminal, there's some different things you can choose here. You can do a PowerShell, you can do Git Bash, Command Prompt, JavaScript Debug Terminal, some other things. Usually you run PowerShell. Most of the time it'll default to PowerShell on here. As we run through some of this code, you may see like a Node.js pop up or something like that. There's also Git Bash. If you're familiar with Git and you've used Git Bash before, that's all this is, and I can change it and show you what it looks like. And it kind of comes up as something real quick. So if you go in here, you got Git Bash here, and you can kind of see how they look. This is the location of it and the path and where I opened it up at. Same thing, it's telling me I opened it up in Desktop Summer React, but usually it'll default to PowerShell, and that's fine. You can leave it on PowerShell, it's not a big deal. So now what we want to do is we want to create our application. And so what we do is we do npm plus you create and then we do space Vite, V-I-T-E. If you go out on your own and do some of the tutorials on YouTube and that, which I would recommend as you get time, probably won't have a whole lot of time left in this class to be doing some of that stuff, but they'll do an npm create space React app. So you'll see a command like this a lot of times if you go out for those tutorials. It'll be npm create React app. And this is an older way of doing it, so they're trying to get away from it. So when you see it, can you see that, Jason? Yeah. So when you see that out on those YouTube videos or any tutorial you happen to look at between now and as you go through Mr. Gumested's class, that's an old way to do it. So they're trying to get away from that. They're trying to use this Vite. It's spelled V-I-T-E, but it's said like Vite, V-E-E-T. So when you hear Vite, that's what it is. And what it is, it's just a dev server. It builds some stuff for you that's included in what your code and stuff that you'll need. So you'll do an npm create Vite at latest. And then do another space and whatever you want to name your project or your app. So I'll do my summer app. Once you do that, so you do your npm create Vite at latest, my summer app, and usually when you name your apps you put a dash in between them like that. You want to go lowercase, you just hit enter. It may ask you if you want to install Vite. sometimes you may get an issue with NPM. It says NPM not found or something like that.
Yeah, CMI is not recognized.
Okay, so a lot of times we may have to put it in your path on your computer, so let's give that a shot and we'll see if that fixes it, and then we'll go from there. So once you get that installed, you'll get some, it'll say select a framework, and it highlights vanilla. If you scroll up a little bit, you'll be able to see the top of the list there. So you got vanilla, which is just normal JavaScript. You got Vue, which is another type. Then you get React. We want that React, so get your underline and highlight that React. Go ahead and hit enter. And now it says select a variant, and we want JavaScript. There's your TypeScript there, Jason, that you were talking about, and that's the one you can choose. I think one of the girls
Oh boy, I kind of know that
in the fall semester decided to do it with TypeScript, and she wasn't familiar with it, so she struggled. I finally made her switch it to JavaScript to get her going right. But so when you get to the JavaScript part, you'll hit JavaScript. Let me pause it again. I'll help you out, Dominic. So once you pick JavaScript, it tells you you're done. Now run, and you can see they have CD to whatever your app name is. So you should still have your terminal up, and so where that flashing cursor is or whatever, you can just do a CD, and then you're gonna CD, which in the command prompt line or these terminals that we're using, CD means change directory. So we're changing the directory right now. We're showing that we're in the desktop, Summer React, and that's our main folder here, Summer React. Well, now we want to CD, we want to change our directory and go into this, the app we just created. So you're going to go into whatever you named it, dash Summer App, and it should have your name. It should tell you right here exactly where you want to go. So once you CD into your app, hit enter, and now you can see it went from desktop Summer React. Now it says desktop Summer React, my summer app. So now we're actually in this folder here that we just created by doing that create v.latest.
So basically a whole new folder, but within the folder.
Yes, yeah. So when we do that create v at latest, it creates our app. It gets all our files and everything we need in there. So if you open it up and look at it, you see there's public. Usually in the public there's images in there. You have a source, you have some assets, and that will have some images in it at times. You'll have an app.css, an app.jsx, an index.css, a main.jsx, and an index.html, and a couple other things in there. So now we need to do, now that we switched into this My Summer app or whatever you're calling your app, we changed our directory. We're inside of that now. So inside of that, we got to do an npm install. And this npm install, it's going to take a couple seconds to run. You can see my cursor flashing around. You'll see your cursor jumping. You may see text coming up on the screen showing you what it's installing. But this is going to put a big package into this with a bunch of different libraries and stuff we can use. You'll get some of these warnings. They're depreciated. Don't worry about the warnings. If you get an error, that's when you should get worried. Knock on wood, 99% of the time you won't get an error when you're running this. But like I said, it will take a little bit of time because this is a big folder we're putting in here. There. So it's added 273 packages and audited 274 packages in 36 seconds. That's what this is telling us. 102 packages are looking for funding. Run npm fund for details. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to fund any of these. I don't have the money. I'm a teacher. So I found 0 vulnerabilities. We're still in our summer app directory, but if we open our folder up again and look, now we have this node modules folder it added for us. This node module folders has all kinds of different libraries and stuff in here, and you can scroll through. And as we do some of these projects, these code alongs and stuff, we may get an error saying it's not found. We may have to go and install it in here because it's like an outside type of a node module that didn't come with NPM. And you can see all the different ones going through here. There's React, there's React DOM. We're going to be using both of those eventually. But you can see all the different libraries. There's Vite. We just used Vite. You open some of these up and you can see the different things inside of them. And so that's what that npm install does. It creates this node modules folder and puts all that stuff in there for us. So now that we've done that, if we go back and look, so here's the checklist we have to do every time. It says cd into that folder, run this npm install. We just did that. Now we run this npm run dev, npm run dev, and this should start our server up and get our application actually up and running. So we'll hit enter on that. You can see it's using Vite version 5.3.5. It was ready in 429 milliseconds. Should give you a local host address there. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
So if you hit control and click on that, it will open up that window for you. You can copy and paste it into a browser if you want to do that. I'm just going to hit control and click on it. And this is what you should see now. You got that?
Yeah.
So there's a button here. You can click on it. It'll do a count for you. If we go look at our code over here, we can go into source. We can go look at this app.jx. And here is the code for what's going on over on our web page here. You can see this is just like HTML, and that's what kind of makes React neat, is that you can use JavaScript and HTML all together without having to worry about different folders and this and that for the most part. So here we have an empty bracket tag. When you create these pages, you have to have some kind of parent tag with them, whether it be a div, or a lot of times you'll see this blank or empty bracket here. So you'll see an empty bracket and a close empty bracket. So you may see that a lot in this. That's what it is that's like the parent bracket, and everything under it's a child, and you have to have that parent bracket to get this stuff to work right. So if I took that out, yeah, you get an error. Let me save it, and you'll see I get a bunch of errors now in my terminal down here. And it's telling me adjacent JXX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. And it says, do you want a JSS fragment? And that's that open tag. Close tag, you can end up putting a div tag in there if you want and not using it for anything but a parent. So if I put those back, and now it gets happy again. So if you come across that, that's what it's complaining about. It's looking for a parent tag. And you can see it updated. You'll still see this stuff in your terminal, but that's not a big deal. Here's what we're looking for here. It's saying everything's running again right with no issues going on. You can see my choice over here switch to node my summer app, so that's what it's kind of running everything out of. If you look on the right hand side over here, you'll see other PowerShell instances running. There's that bash one I opened up earlier. If you have stuff open like that and you're not using it, you can always right click on it and kill the terminal, and it'll get rid of them. If you happen to kill the one you're working in for some reason, just go ahead and restart it, and then you'll probably have to do the npm run dev part again to get it up and running. So if we look at this a little bit more in detail, and then we'll start doing a little bit of coding and explain it as we go through the coding part too. So this is, like I said, just regular HTML in here. You have an anchor tag. It's not going anywhere. They have this Vite logo, class name logo. This class name here is a CSS call. Like we used class for CSS before. In React, you have to use the keyword class name, lowercase class, uppercase N for name. And that's how you add styles to your page. So we could probably go into app CSS and find this logo. And here it is right here, the logo class. It's saying what it's doing. If you hover over it, it does a drop shadow. So if we go back and look at our actual page that we created or open, you can see you mouse over and it puts a drop shadow behind them. The link shouldn't go anywhere. It goes to Vite though. And so, whoops, pulled the wrong thing. And same with this one here, it's just using the React logo. They use the class name, logo React. They put the alt tag in there just like you do with an image in HTML. You put that alt tag still in there. Anchor tag, close your anchor tag. Here's your div for the part, close the div. I got an H1 tag in here that says Vite plus React. If we go look at our code or our web page, excuse me, you can see there's our H1 here where it says Vite React. They got another class name called card. And then here they do a button with an on-click event. And this on-click, it's just an anonymous function here. It's saying set the count. And the count is count plus 1. And then here, just like we were doing with the JavaScript, they don't need that tick mark for it. You can just put the curly brackets and your variable name in there and it'll display on the screen. So here it says count is 0 inside that button. Here's that button. It says count is, and that count right now is set to 0. And the way you can check that is here's where they're declaring this count up here. When there's a thing called useState, and that's how it keeps track of, I don't want to say objects necessarily, but items in your code. And when you do it, it's set up as an array, and you can see it's an array because it has the brackets there. Count is our variable, and the set count is made so we can do an update on it. So as you can see in our code here where the set count is highlighted, the set count is going to update our count for us. So you use your count, and then anytime you want to change that, if you're going to change that value, you always do it a set, whatever your variable name is here. So count, so we do a set count. And then we declare a use state, and that use state just keeps track of what's going on value-wise for your variable there. Our use state, we're setting that value to 0, and that's why when we see count in here, this count, we're setting that count to 0. So when we look at our web page again, you can see our count is 0. If we click on it, it'll start counting and going up. And that's because we're doing this on-click event here where it's saying the count, it's at 0, then add 1 to it each time. So every time we click on it, it's just adding another count to it. And that's stuff we've been doing already in regular JavaScript. We just write it a little bit different in here with this set count and stuff like that. And then keep going down, you can see we got a paragraph. edit. It's got our little code element tag here, and that just kind of makes it look like different text, so you can tell that it's code. And then a little name here. Click on the Vite and React logos to learn more. And again, we're using this class name, which is what?
The div.
That class name is a way to call style. Instead of saying class equals and whatever that style name is, we use class name in React. So when you see class name, just know it's just calling the style. We can go look in the style sheet, app CSS, and look for read the docs. And you can, here's the read the docs, and they just set the color with it. If we want to change the color here, we can do color purple. This is just like CSS, HTML, JavaScript we've been doing, and you can see here it changed to purple from that gray color that it was. We got media queries just like we had for the CSS stuff we worked on. Here's some keyframes to get it to do stuff. That keyframes here is actually causing this little atom looking thing to spin, is what that keyframes is doing for this. And we didn't go into that. It's a little more advanced than what we were learning in here, but if you end up playing with some of this stuff, that's what you can end up doing and working with. So now that we got that done, we're going to go ahead and get rid of all this and create our own app and just play around with some of this stuff. So if we go into app.jsx, we can get rid of everything in here,
Including the constant as well.
Yep, the only thing we want to save is this function app, and then the parenthesis and the curly bracket at the bottom. So we can get rid of all that. If we save this and go back and look at our web page, oh, we get an error because everything got ripped out and that, but and actually if you get rid of that parenthesis, there we go. Get rid of that parenthesis, you'll see now we still have our server. Our server's still up, our local host 5173, but we took all the code out of it. All that HTML stuff is gone, so now we have nothing but a blank page. That's fine with us. So what we're going to do first is under source here, we're going to right click on source and do new file, and we're going to call it, let's call it header.jsx. When you put it in a capital letter like that with that capital H for header, capital A for app, that's saying that's a component. So right now we're creating a new component for this page, and we're going to actually nest it inside another component. So we created a header component is what we're doing there. I forgot the shortcut. Let me look real quick and see if I can find a shortcut to hurry up and create us a quick page instead of having to type it all out. So if you type in IMR and then tab, right away you'll get your import React from React. IM as in man and R.
I tried pressing a tab, but the snippet didn't work on it.
We had to create a global snippet, and you should see now import React from React. We did RAFCE tab, and it gave us some pre-populated stuff. Dominic had to set up a global snippet himself. He just named his RFC, and it will do the same thing now as what we did here. You see they put the div tags in for us already as the parent one that we talked about earlier when we had the blank ones instead. If you didn't want these divs, you could clear them out and put just blank empty brackets in there if you want. It gives us the name of our component, and this export default, every component has to have that. That way it can be used in other components. This way you'll export it out of this one and it can be imported into another, and you'll see that in a minute how you import these the components to use in other places. Here's our arrow function that we've been using in JavaScript the last couple weeks. This return here, it just says in the return, it says whatever's in there, return it to the screen. This is what I want to see on the screen part of it. So that's just telling us go ahead and put that in there. Got a return. And then inside this div tag, we'll do an h1 and just call it my first app. If we save that and we go look at our web page, we won't see anything yet. What we need to do is go back in this app.jsx. And this app.jsx, we're going to import. We're going to do an import. What we want to import, we just created header, so we want to import header. And we're going to import it from, and as we do these imports, you'll put a single quote, a period, and a slash. And this is saying go out up a directory and grab what we need. And you can see it highlights header for us. You can just type in header there if you want. And then we have to put the file extension on there, JSX. So now we're going to go get that header component we just created. We're going to put it in this app function. So again, in this app function, we need that return because we want to return whatever it is to the screen. And I can zoom in on this a little bit so you can see it easier. And then what we want, we can put our empty brackets in here.
Yeah, I don't know.
And we want that header component is what we're going to call and put in here.
Okay.
So just like HTML, we put the angle brackets in there. Our header component starts with a capital H, so of course we got to have that capital H there. It's not going to find it. Put the header in there. Now if we save this, it should be able to go out to the web page and see my first app show up.
Somewhat there, but not quite.
What's missing?
I got everything, just
I'll take a look at it.
my,
As we created a component called header.jsx. We just had a little div tag in there, put an h1 in there. And then what we did is we took our header component and we nested it inside this app component is all we did. So that's an easy way to call different pieces of components. So let's do another component here real quick. We'll just
what's my call gone? This word gone, I just meant it.
did it. Let's
There it is.
all right. So we're going to go back to the source file again. We're going to right click on it. We're going to do a new file. And we're going to call this one food.jsx. And again, it's a component, and you can see it's a component too because it puts this little atom sign up there. I guess that's an atom sign up. And we start it with a capital letter again to show that it's a component. And then we can do, yours will be, what was it, RFC that we just created for you, Dominic?
Yeah.
So RFC tab. So,
Well, I think at first we could have made something else. That was just the part where you use constant, and the one before that was. Oh, I didn't get to import that.
so again, we're importing React from React. The newer versions, you don't need to do that as much, but it's nice to get in the habit of doing it in case you're working with an older version. And then again, we create a constant. Our component is called food. We use the arrow function to do what we want to do. We got our return, our parentheses for the return, saying this is what we want to show. And so in here, what we'll do is above this return, we're going to create a variable. And we'll just say it's a constant, and we'll call it food1, and we'll just set it to the value of an orange. And actually, let's do a second one. We'll do a constant food2, and we'll call it banana. We get some red lines, red squiggly, it's declared but never read. Constant probably doesn't know what the word is. I hate when it does that, but it's one of the extensions I have installed, so it's kind of a pain. So we create a couple variables just like we did in JavaScript. They're constants. We call it food1 and food2. We assign it the value of orange and a banana. So now inside of our div tags here, we're going to create an unordered list. And how do you start an unordered list?
UL.
Yep, UL, unordered list. What's the list item?
LI.
Yep, LI. And we'll just call this apple. Actually, we'll say food1. And again, just like we did in JavaScript, where we did the string literal, where we called our variable string interpolation is what we called it in C#. I like that name a lot better for some reason. But instead of putting the tick marks, we don't need the tick marks. We just put these curly brackets and we can put our variable name in there and it will show up. And that's what's kind of nice about React is you don't have to worry about all that. You can just call your variable, and we'll do it here for food2. But in this one, we're going to do a 2 uppercase. Close our curly bracket. And again, just like JavaScript, we're calling the food object here. We're using a method to convert it to an uppercase. So if we do that, if we save this, we got to go back to our app.jsx because that's our main page that holds everything. And if we look at this index.html here, well, if we look at this main.jx, they're doing a React DOM create root. They're doing a document get element by ID root. And this render says put this out there to it. And so they're doing this React.strict mode. That strict mode is just like the strict mode that we used in JavaScript when we were writing the pages or code for it. Being strict, it follows some rules on it. And then here we are calling our component, that app component. And then if we go look at index, and like we were doing web pages, that the browser always goes and looks for this index page first, that lowercase index. That's what the browser goes and searches for. So you have this index, and here we have our type HTML, just like we normally do, our language. We have the head up here. We have some metas. We got a link, another meta. We got our title in here. You can change that title to whatever you want to change it to if you want to change it here. Closes our head, and of course here's our body tag. This body tag's got this ID root in here. We go back and look at that main JSX. It's saying go get that document element by ID root and put this stuff in that root ID. So all the stuff we're creating in this app JSX and all these components that we put in this app JSX gets set in this main JSX here. It's saying this is what we want to populate, push it out to this index through this ID here. And again, they're calling that JavaScript file here. They're calling this main JSX, that way it can access it. And this ID root is taking this app and displaying it out to the screen. So that's how all this actually gets out to the screen so we can see it. Does that make sense?
I have a question about that script type module. Isn't it? What are the type in module again?
The module's just for this React stuff. That's why it's using module here for it instead of like JavaScript, I think is what we were using in JavaScript, I believe.
Yeah, because at first we were always use script and SRC.
Yep. And so instead of script now, we're just saying type. It's going to be a module type, and we're still using an SRC. We're still saying here's our source. So it's saying go out to this source folder, go find this main JSX. And this main JSX has our little bit of JavaScript in here. It's using this React DOM object. It's using this create root method, and this create root method's passing this document get element by ID. That ID we're searching for is root. It says in that root or ID, render this stuff out, and that render is just saying put this stuff out to the screen so we can see it. This React strict mode is just like that strict mode that we had in JavaScript. It's saying we got to follow certain rules, if not, throw errors for it. And then go get this app component, everything in this app component, and right now we just have this header component in it, and put it out in this index page and show it to the screen. So that's all that's really doing for us. So here's that root ID. Get that root ID here in this element by ID call, put the app in it, whatever's in this app, show it to the screen. So that's all it's doing. Well, now that we created that food JSX, we're going to have to go import that. And so now we're saying, okay, get that food component we created, let us bring it in here, and then whatever's in this, along with the header, show it to the screen for us. So if we save that, save our food one, and we go look at our web page, there's that list that we just created.
Can I see the code, the app.gsx for a second?
So you got to always do your import statement. Anytime you're bringing in any kind of component to another component, you have to import it. And what allows us to import it is this export default code down here. If this isn't down here, it will not work. It will not be able to find it because you're not exporting it. So that export default allows us to import it to another page and use it so it can be seen. And actually, to clean this up, we can get rid of these two import statements. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay. So we got that there. So let's do one more component. And this will be our, we'll call this, go to our source again, right click on it. We want a new file. We'll call this footer.jsx. You can see the little icon over here changes as you go through. It goes to just the file. You can use JS if you want. JSX is the more popular way to go. So we'll use JSX, but you could leave it as JS and it would still technically work. We do JSX. At JSX, one second. So JSX, it just stands for JavaScript XML, and it allows us to rewrite HTML in React. Just makes it easier to write and add HTML to the React code that we're doing here. So again, put a new component, RAFCE tab. Again, you can see it creates a constant. Our component name footer does our arrow function for us, sets our export default footer for us. Okay. Did you type in RCE? Is that what we called it? RCE?
Nah, instead actually I brought up that whole resolve configures from VATE.
Oh, okay. So what we can do, if we want to change this, we can change it to footer if we want. You can leave it a div. And inside here, we'll do a paragraph. We're going to do the and copyright shortcut that we learned in HTML. And then we're going to create a new date object in here. We're going to do get full year. Close our curly bracket. And then you can put whatever you want for your website name here. Save that. We'll go back to our app JSX again. We're going to import that because we're calling it from one component into this component. Footer there.
When it said, what is it, footer, was it supposed to be import footer from footer? I mean, footer on JSX, on your footer JSX file?
We don't need to import it from there because we're going to export it. we're not bringing anything into this one. When you import it, you're bringing something into it.
Got it.
So like this app JSX, we're bringing this footer component into it, so we have to import it in that file.
Oh, I see.
Yep. So we're bringing this header, this footer, and the food in, so we have to import all three of those. If you look up above it too, they have import.appcss, so they're importing that CSS file here in along with it. So anything being brought in and used in that component has to be imported into it. All right, so you good with that?
Yep.
So if we save this, go back out and look at our code or our web page, you should see we have a little footer on there, our little copyright sign that we set up. Here's getting the full year from that date object we created and used, and then whatever you name your website, whatever you want to call that there. Everybody good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So next thing we'll do is let's go add some style real quick. So let's go to our food page, our food component, I should call it. And inside our LI, we'll do class name. And again, to add style to a React component page, we have to do class name, not just class like we did in CSS. So class name, we'll call it Apple. We'll do another one here. Equals orange. And we'll do one final one. Banana. So once you have that done, we can go back into our app CSS. And just like we did our normal CSS, because this is a class that we're using, we use the period. Call it Apple, put our curly brackets, and we'll just do color is red for an apple. Make this tough, since an orange, we'll do color orange. And finally, we'll do banana and give it a color of yellow. So we'll save that. Go look at our app. Gotta save my food one. And now you can see we added a class. We call red apple class, orange class, banana class. It changes colors. You can see our banana is in capital letters compared to the other ones because we did that 2 uppercase on it. So that allows our banana to be all caps. They're all yellow, red, orange, just like we wanted. That working?
Yep.
Okay. So next thing we can do is let's add a button to this. So under our UL there, we're going to add a button. So we'll do button type equals button. We're going to do an on-click event with this. So it's going to be on-click equals, we want our curly brackets. We're going to do a parentheses to show that it's a function. There's our arrow function again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change the name of our food a little bit. So let's go back up top here. We're going to create a constant, if I can type it. And when I mentioned that use state earlier from that last example, so we're going to create a use state here, and this is called a hook. Hooks are a way to set up a variable so they can be changed. You'll be using hooks a lot. useState is a common one that you'll use all the time, and I believe useEffect is another one you'll use quite a bit. As we start doing our code along for our final and for this to-do list, we'll see these used a lot more than what I'm going to show you here in this little quick example. But just know these are called hooks. They're used to change the state of stuff, either effect or a use state kind of a thing. So they're always arrays, so we can put our square brackets there. We'll just name this one food. And when you do these, you always do the current state, which is food, and then an update state that you want. So then you'll use the keyword set. So you always use set and then the variable name again. So we're setting food. So we have food, and then we're going to set the food. So once you do that, you do equal and then use state. And this use state, you could tell what you want it to do, so we can either leave it blank, we can put a value in here. We're going to actually put a value in here, and we're going to put grape in here, or semicolon at the end. So now in our list, we got to go add our food to it, and we're just going to call the variable So let's take a look at this real quick. I'm going to cut my button out of here just so it works and you can see what's going on. You don't have to do this though. So when you use this use state, you have to import it. So I'm just going to copy it from this page here. And again, it's something that has to get used in this page, so we have to import it. So if we look at our web page now, you can see we added that grape down here. We don't have any style or anything on it. But just by creating this variable up here called food, and we set that use state to grape, we're saying set food to grape. So even though we're just calling food here, we set it to grape up here. And we look at our web page, man, it drives me crazy. You can see it puts grape down there for us. So now we want to finish up with our button. I got to type mine out since I cut it out of there. So we'll do button type equals button, do an on-click event, parentheses, get our arrow going here. So now what we want to do is we're going to set our food in here, and the set food, we're going to set it to a peach. And that change food I just typed in there, that's going to be the value that shows up on our button, just like we did in JavaScript and HTML. Like I said, this is all pretty much the same. There's a little different nuances, but that's why we learned JavaScript first. So when we come to this, it's pretty much the same as we have been doing it. So if we save that, you can see here's our button now. If we click on change food, that grape should change to peach, and it does. So what we did is we create that button, give it an on-click event here. It's an anonymous function that's saying when we click on this, we want to set our food, and again, here's our set food here. And we change this use state from grape down in this set food to peach. So that's all we're doing there is we originally assigned it to grape. We use the set food. We use that useState to change it and say change our variable here food to peach with that set food. So we're just saying set food now to peach. If we wanted to, we can call it anything we want to. Call it mango. So go here, click on it, and it changes it to mango. So whatever value you put in that set food is mango. You can do if statements or whatever to change things around in this.
And if I have to ask, it's also kind of possible where it kind of like, no matter how many times you keep on clicking it, you keep on changing like over and over again.
This won't, because we don't have it set up to do that. We just have it to click one time on the button and just change it to mango. But yeah, like that count, how they had the count and change the count and stuff like that. We could set up more in-depth code and have it run through some different flavors of the food and stuff like that, or different types of food. So that's the button. If we go back to our app.jsx and we change some of these around, so if we take the footer, put it over the header, save that, and go look. Now the footer component shows up first because that's how we have it aligned in our app here. So the footer got moved up to the front, our header is still in the middle, and then the food is at the bottom now. And so that's how easy it is to move things around, and Control Y, to move pieces of your component around to get it to change and line up how you want it to line up. If we didn't want that header in there, we could just get rid of it. Now the header's gone and it just leaves it. So that's how easy it is to kind of add and remove code out of there like that with these components. So if you have a component and you want to reuse it, you can reuse it. We could put food in there again, save it, and then it uses it again. And so that's how easy it is to reuse a lot of this stuff with React. You can just use the component, you can change a thing or two in the component, and then reuse it again, name it a little bit different, but it saves you a ton of time from having to code everything out. You can do if statements, but it's not technically like we are used to doing. Most of these will set on a, so you'll say something like if logged in to show somebody's logged in. If it's showing as like a true that they're logged in, you can set the content to call a certain component, so you can have a special login screen. If they're not logged in, you can have them go to a login form kind of a component. So that would just be a form with a name like login, and that you can do your coding inside that. If they're not logged in and they click a button to try and log in, you can have it pop that component up and show that component and stuff like that. And we'll get into more and more of this as we start coding through some of these code alongs and stuff like that. I just want to give you a brief overview of what you're going to be seeing as we start doing these code alongs and why you're going to be seeing some of this stuff. So I'll go ahead and stop there. That kind of gives you a good introduction to this. Tomorrow we'll start doing a to-do list code along. And if you want to do some more research today on some of this stuff with React, you're more than welcome to. And then, like I said, tomorrow we'll do the code along. We should hopefully be able to get the to-do list code along done tomorrow. And if we get that done, we'll jump onto the final project one, because I know that's going to take a few days to do just because it's so big. But
And I'll be sure to feed all my Pokemon that I know of.
yeah.